Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Sunday session of Hebrew Public Enrichment Workshops. Today, we have a very special workshop with our own capstone trip provider, Beni Levin, and he's going to take you, Hebrew Charter students, on a virtual trip to Israel. So without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to Beni. And if you have any questions or comments or want to ask anything, you can put it in the chat. We'd love to hear which school you're from, which grade you're in. We're on webinar, so we can't see you. You can see us. So let's chat on Zoom and let's all give the floor to Beni and hear his exciting stories about Israel. Shalom, Beni.
Shalom, how are you? Everyone, welcome to Israel. And today, I'm actually going to take you a little bit to a beautiful city called Tel Aviv. And the idea for me is really not just tour Tel Aviv, because how can I bring you guys to the other side, the feeling, the smell? But I want to show 4 different spots of Tel Aviv. Talk about dreamers. You know, in this time, we are really having a hard time. It's sometimes you need to go to school, sometimes you can't go to school. We in Israel, until today, been on lockdown for another 3 weeks. So we couldn't go and leave our house for a while. So I want to show you a little bit where is Tel Aviv. So I will share with you my screen, and I want you to see that we are going to start from this beautiful hill. It's called Jaffa, and Jaffa is a little hill, but it's not natural. And we're going to be in Tel Aviv, riding a little bit, but here is Israel. And I know that many of you studied and saw Israel, but one of my favorite things to do is that in one day, it's the only place in the world probably that you can swim in 4 seas in one day. So number 1 sea is the Mediterranean. Number 2 is the Sea of Galilee. Number 3, the lowest place on earth, the Dead Sea. And number 4 is the Red Sea with Eilat Bay. But today we're actually going to go to Tel Aviv. So where the name is coming from and what is Tel Aviv is actually very interesting. So first of all, Tel Aviv starting with this huge, small, big, but little hill. You can see this hill. This is a picture that's been taken from a drone of the hill of Jaffa. And it's actually called, this hill called Tel. So what is Tel? Tel is layers of civilization. So it was a great place with a river to put the boats in, and you know, the civilization was here, but the first civilization was destroyed. And instead of destroying it and digging down, people said, oh, let's fill that up, the first layer, and build on top of it. And if the ground become a little bit higher, and then again and again and again, and the ground grew up to 200 feet. And now when you look from the side, you can see that this beautiful hill, that it's 200 feet high. And right here you can see the church, the only church in the world that's facing to the west. All the rest of the churches are facing to the east. But in the background, you can see the city of dreamers. So why I'm calling it the city of dreamers? So in order to look in Jaffa, Jaffa is an old city, 5,000-6,000 years old. And the people that are arriving to Jaffa, many of them don't want to stay in the city. They want to go outside. They want to work in the farms. In the ancient time, about 100 years ago. And they're going outside. But when they deciding to build a city, they're meeting in the sand outside of the old city of Jaffa, of this little hill that we saw. Everything, including all these tall buildings that you saw, all those tall buildings were sand like this. So this city of Tel Aviv was a city that started by a dreamer. By the way, to bring all these people here, you needed to give them free land, and you needed to cheat in order to kind of invite people to be part of the city by giving free of them an opportunity to build a house. And right here, what they did here is they did a lottery. So the person standing here saying, hey, who wants to buy, to build their house and to build a plot of land and choose a plot of land? And nobody is saying anything, but one person is lifting up his hand and he says, okay, so you take a stone and you throw it as far as possible, and where it's gonna land, that's gonna be your land. And like this, everybody is starting to build their own houses or get their own plot of land. And here it is, the first street of Tel Aviv. And the name Tel Aviv is actually in Hebrew very, very interesting. The name coming from a book by Theodor Herzl. Theodor Herzl was is somebody that lived in Europe, in Austria, and he thought that the Jewish people need to live in the Holy Land, and he wrote this book called Old New Land, or Old New Land. And that's how Tel Aviv gets its name. So what is Tel? Tel, you already know. It's an archaeological tell of different layers, right? So this is very important archaeological tell. But what is Aviv means? Aviv means spring. Spring, it's something that's symbolizing new. So it's the old Tel, new land. And that's connecting to Tel Aviv. And Tel Aviv is a city that's growing. And today, Jaffa is maybe 6,000 years old, but Tel Aviv is much, much bigger and newer and innovative. And if we want to go from Jaffa into Tel Aviv, the next dreamer, and that's all happening in 1909, but the next dreamer is actually a person by the name David Ben Gurion. So if you land in Israel, and you're going to be landing in an airport called Ben Gurion Airport, named after the first prime minister. But before we go and touch this story, I want to show you one thing, because in order to go from place one to place two, the best way to go around Tel Aviv is actually this beautiful way of electric scooters. So here you can see that the best way to go on the promenade by the Mediterranean Sea is to take those scooters and ride them on the bicycle lines near the sea, near the marine, along the permanent and along the beach, where all the hotels, all the beautiful restaurants. It's actually super fun, but can be also very, very dangerous. But I have to say, the most fun way to travel around Tel Aviv is taking those electric scooters. And we are going to take them all the way to Rothschild Boulevard, in front of the house of this man. The first mayor of Tel Aviv, Mayor Dizengoff, is taking his house and donating his house to be the first museum in the city of Tel Aviv. And this is the first museum. That's great. He's giving the city started in 1909. He's dying in the end of the 20s. He's giving his house to the municipality of Tel Aviv. They're making it into a museum. And then in the year 1948, David Ben Gurion, the first prime minister of Tel Aviv, deciding that this house, look, this house is perfect to be the house that they're going to declare the independence of the state of Israel. And why it's so important? They knew that Israel surrounded by 5 countries that will attack them at the moment they declared independence. So he looked for a safe place, because everybody that's going to come to this ceremony is the most important leadership people in the entire country. So look, small windows. It's super smart, small windows. So even if, I don't know, any weapon or rocket will explode outside, the windows are very small. 2 floors. So even if a rocket hits the roof, you're still protected. And this is the way that they're choosing the place to become the Independence Hall and the place where they're going to declare the independence of Israel. But the story is actually brilliant. I don't know how they didn't do a movie about it, because David Ben-Gurion calling to his right man, Moshe Sharet, and he says, you go to America, United States, and you check with them what the American government and the American officials think our chances. Bye-bye, Moshe Sharet is going on a plane. Second person that he calls to his office is this lady. Her name is Golda Meir. And he says, Golda, you go to the strongest army that from the countries surrounding us, and you please make sure they don't gonna attack us. This country called Jordan. She's telling to Ben Gurion, how you want me to do it? Look at me, they recognize me, I'm famous. And he is saying, find a solution like this. Golda Meir, you go away. She later on was one of the prime ministers of Israel. We had a female prime minister. In Israel, prime minister, it's like a president in the United States. But she goes to a Bedouin friend that says, I'm going to arrange a meeting with King Abdallah, the king of Jordan. I'm going to arrange the meeting in the middle of the desert in a tent, because in Jordan, most of the people are Bedouins. So she's putting a burqa. Burqa is a head cover of the Arab women. She goes with a local sheikh, Bedouin sheikh from Israel. She's driving a jeep, arriving into the middle of the desert. She's storming inside the tent. She's looking on King Abdallah, and King Abdallah writing in his memory book. He's writing, she's lifting up her finger. We call it the mother finger. Why mother? Because with this finger, the mothers, I don't know about your mothers, but my mother used to take this finger and say, hey, don't do that. No, don't do that. And like this, it's the mother finger. So here writing, she's lifting the finger and says, I have a proposition for you. We're going to declare the independence, and you're not going to attack us. King Abdallah is sitting on his throne like this. He's lifting his head. He's calling to his assistant and say, tickle me so I can laugh about this proposition. You go back to David Ben-Gurion and say, I want to be the king of Jerusalem. Make the story short, Moshe Sharet is coming from the States, says that we have a 50% of chance. 50% is like flipping a coin. You bet on the most valuable thing that you have in your life. I don't know, your phone, your computer, your dog, your brother, your sister, your parents, whatever is the most expensive. Would you bet and play heads or tails on their life, or give it away, your phone or anything like this? Probably no. But he's coming back, and he's telling to David Ben-Gurion that that's the chances. Golda Meir is coming back and saying to David Ben-Gurion, they're gonna attack us. And David Ben-Gurion deciding that he wants in this room to declare the independence of Israel. So they're writing 300 invitations. They're writing, please come to the house of Mayor Dizengoff on Friday, 4:00 p.m. Keep this meeting as a secret. The next day, all the newspapers, David Ben-Gurion gonna declare the independence of Israel. And when Friday comes, That's how the street look like. They're arriving, all the people are around. Here's Golda Meir, here's David Ben Gurion. They're arriving inside. Everybody's waiting. Inside, he's standing, he is declaring the independence. People are gathering outside. If they couldn't make it because they were not living in the area, they will stand or sit near the radio, and he will declare and say, Ani machriz bazot al akamat medina Yehudit be'eretz Israel. I declare the independence of the state of Israel in the land of Israel. And everybody's clapping their hands, and straight away the war starts, and the coin was flipped. Now, I'm talking to you, so you know the outcome. And the outcome is that today, this is a museum. And the next day, the Palestinian Post had State of Israel was born. And today, the same location, if you look on it from a drone above, right here, you can see how modern is this area. But it's still keeping a connection to the past. And on this picture, I chose that picture especially for you. Why? Because on this picture, what I love the most is to go a little bit backwards and to look on this. Because right now, you are looking on this picture on offices of 1,200 startups. Yeah, let me move away. 1,200 startup companies in this picture, in those buildings, that's where their offices are. So Tel Aviv also becoming the land of the startup nation. And Valerie, thank you very much. Israel is a startup nation, but I want to take one story. This one story is connected to this little spaceship that we can see behind the moon. And this is the last story I'm going to tell you today. It's part of Tel Aviv because in these times when everything is a little bit not as we used to, that's something new. Sometimes it's very hard. Sometimes we're at home. Sometimes we see so many people talking to us on Zoom. It's like, ah! So I want you to remember those dreamers that until today, for me, I have goosebumps when I think about this spaceship that her name is in Hebrew, Bereshit. Bereshit means Genesis. And it's a story that starts with two friends. One of them went on a social media on Facebook and he saw an advertisement for a competition made by Google. You maybe heard about this company. And the competition, he posting it on his page and says how cool it will be if we had an Israeli team that will compete in this competition. So his friend says, let's meet. They are meeting and they're reading all the fine scripts. And they finding out that there are free things that you need in order to be a part of the competition. The prize, by the way, the biggest prize is $30 million. So number one is you need to raise and have a capital of $50,000. So that's, if you have a good idea, it's check. They were not worried about it. But the second thing, you need to apply, and you need to apply with blueprints that will be submitted until a certain date. And this date was 40 days from the moment that they are meeting, 40 days. And what you need to submit is the design for the spaceship. Look at this. But the spaceship needs to land on the moon. Here. Now, I don't know how much you know about the moon, but it's need to land on the moon. The moon terrain is very rough. It's need to transmit back to Earth, and it's need to move, drive on this terrain, and for 500 meters. It's about 1,500 feet. Transmit again back to Earth. When they read this, they realize that to build something or to design something that can ride on such a terrain, it's like a really big four-wheel drive vehicle. It's impossible. And here is one thing that I want you to take with you. Those two friends going home, one of them is giving up. He says it's not possible because it's going to take us 18 months to build a vehicle or to design a vehicle that can drive. And we have 40 days. So 18 months, 40 days, not working. The other friend came back home and said, I'm not giving up. He downloaded all the big booklet of this competition and he read everything. And he read that in the fine print that the spaceship need to move, not to drive. So he read again and he see it's written, the word that they used is to move. So he was so excited. And here you can see the pictures, right? So you know what's the outcome, but he's writing to Google and say, hey, my spaceship, I'm planning that this spaceship going to be very small. It will have an extra engine, okay, like this little extra engine in the bottom with a little bit of fuel because the gravity on the moon is only 1/6 of the gravity on Earth. So I'm going to land, transmit to Earth, take off again, fly 1,500 feet, and land again, and transmit back. So he's writing it, and Google is answering that no problem. You can really do it. You don't need to build a vehicle. 38 companies or 38 crews were taking a part in this competition. One crew out of all of them was taking off with a spaceship from the moon and landing back. The rest had vehicles. They were invested in this project for 18 months at least, if not 2 years. And 37 teams had a vehicle that's supposed to drive. Here's a moment of the spaceship that is taking off and landing on top of the moon, but this spaceship is actually not landing on top of the moon. But we can see this special moment that is happening. This is the control room. We can see the spaceship is taking off from Earth. It's the most critical part. Number one is the takeoff. That's where all the accidents are happening. You can see it's taking off from far away. You can see here the numbers are running, okay? It goes up to 0.5 kilometer. That's about 1 kilometer right now. 1.6 will be 1 mile into the air. People are really nervous. They don't know what's going to happen. Here's 1 mile in the air and then almost 2 miles. And we can see almost the separation will happen very soon. And one part, the first rocket will separate and it's just made it into space. And everybody were excited. And then one of the last pictures that we're taking is a selfie of this spaceship by SpaceIL. Was before it's supposed to land on the moon. This spaceship is actually crashed on the way to the moon. But those people didn't give up. You remember? They are not giving up. They are dreamers. So they didn't give up. They now working on Bereshit 2, Genesis 2. And that's their plan, to create another spaceship that will then land on the moon. And I want really, on one hand, to really wish you, we're coming to an end of our tour of Tel Aviv, and I'm going to summarize it. So Tel Aviv starting from Jaffa, okay? Jaffa, this little town that looked a little bit like this. Today, when we look on it, it's just like a phenomenal city that you can see its skyline in the back. Beautiful, beautiful city that still remembers what it is to be a city that have still old houses and historical houses and the new startup. But it's all about dreamers, about people that will continue and dream. Even when it's hard, they will look for solutions and not for problems. So I'm going to look right now if we have any questions. I'm happy to take them. I'm going to look a little bit on the chat, but I hope you enjoyed our visit a little bit to Tel Aviv. And next week, we're going to a different site, a different place in the land of Israel. And we're actually going to meet another person next week. So that's what's happening next week. Thank you and shalom, shalom.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions, you can type them in the chat now. We'll give you like 30 seconds. And if not, we hope to see you next week. So thank you so much. Can we learn more about Space IL? Somebody asked.
So we can, first of all, go back, Google Space IL. It's a great project. They have, what I love about them and why I chose them, it's because it's non-profit. Somebody were writing and asking, the startup is all about software. Startup is about new idea that coming to use. For example, we have a startup in the agricultural field. It's a small thing called the dripper. It's a small little thing that you put on a tube and it gives a specific amount of water. This one patent worth more than $1 billion. Why? Because now, as a farmer, I can decide that this tree gonna get 2 gallons and this tree gonna get 4 gallons, and they all gonna be with one pipe that watering them. So it's about an idea. Startup is a new idea. It's something that you want to start from zero, sometimes connect different things. So it can be hardware and software. So that's the answer. Space IL, you can see there is a link in the chat, so you can look into it, but it's non-profit. And non-profit, there is something about a company that it's not a company to make money. It's a company that want to teach. So in their beginning, they raised $3 million for their project from kids under 18. Why? Not because they wanted those kids to study about the project, to be part of it, to follow it. They even used one of their initiative presents that they wanted to give is like a selfie with your picture of the spaceship. It's had a little screen. So I feel that this is a really great idea. And sometimes it's about doing something greater and bigger. And many of those startup companies thinking not only about themselves, they're looking to improve the world.
Well, Beni, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, everybody. We hope you guys enjoyed. Bye-bye.
Shalom, shalom, Leitraot.